On today's episode of Filmmakers Who Inspire Us, we sit down with director Orie McGinness, whose work includes music videos for rising stars like Teddy Swims and the band Bad Omens.
Every project in some way is a bit of a milestone, whether it goes good or bad.
Orie opens up about the challenges of shooting high-energy music videos, sharing stories from the set that reveal the grit it takes to bring a vision to life under tight deadlines and unpredictable conditions.
I was just eager to do the work. I didn't really do it hoping that I would get some big payout or have some breakthrough moment.
From overcoming tough obstacles on set to crafting powerful visuals, Orie's experience offers invaluable insights into the world of directing.
I didn't go to film school. I learned on YouTube Academy. There's a lot of value in having teams and people who are good at what they do, better than you at what they do, and if they can just focus on that one task. Great videos have probably died in the edit, and I think bad videos or bad footage has been saved in the edit. It took 10 hours to light this shot, and that left us 1 hour to shoot before we had remaining hour to break down and get out.
Don't miss this behind-the-scenes look at the real trials and triumphs of filmmaking.
Hi, my name is Orie McGinness, and this is Behind the Scenes with MasterShot.
What inspired you to become a filmmaker, and how did you start?
There was never like a moment that I felt like I wanted to get into filmmaking. It was always coming from a musician family. I would watch music videos on Fuse TV or MTV, and just being excited about watching people who played the same music that I was trying to learn how to play. And so I think my draw to music videos was just trying to recreate what I saw when I was younger, what it was inspiring me, and then also making music videos for bands that I was in. I also had friends who were in bands, and so it was just kind of a fun thing to do, to go out and make a music video with a couple of friends. It was never really about the viewership or the money. It was just kind of about either making something really funny or something that felt over the top in terms of like being extreme with like graphics or whatever. So just watching music videos when I was younger, feeling inspired by seeing what they could accomplish, hearing the stories about how they were created, that all sounded fun and exciting to me. So that's just kind of what got me into it.
What are the biggest career milestones or breakthroughs you have experienced?
A big milestone actually just happened recently. It was for an artist called Teddy Swims. That was my first major label gig, first job that actually had one of those budgets that you hear about. It was just an incredible experience to feel like you're in the running with everybody else that you're kind of watching and adoring from the sidelines. Even just getting to write for that job felt like a milestone. Just having the conversations about what I would do if I did get the job, that all felt like a milestone. I was saying all this to my girlfriend when I was in the very early stages of it. It's like, even if it stops here, this just feels so incredible to be in the running for it. And then getting the green light on the project, and day one of shooting it, it was the largest crew that I'd ever had, just the biggest artist. I knew the viewership was gonna surpass anything that I had done in the past, and that was like a palpable moment that helped me feel like, okay, the path that I'm on is actually heading somewhere. Previous to that, I feel like every project in some way is a bit of a milestone, whether it goes good or bad. It's easy to, you at least have that experience of it going good or bad to look back on. There's always something that I've been trying to learn with different projects, whether it's different styles or visual effects. And so whether I failed or succeeded, that felt like a stake in the ground where I could look back and say, okay, that definitely worked. Keep doing that. That definitely didn't work. Let's never try that again.
Can you tell us about one of your favorite projects you've worked on?
One of my current favorite videos that I've ever worked on is Spiritbox Soft Spine. It was a huge VFX undertaking, and it was one of the first videos where I was implementing way more moving camera than I ever had in the past. Typically, my VFX approach is to film somebody on a static camera and integrate them into a 3D world and have my camera move around them. Anybody who does VFX knows that that's a pretty limiting method to do it, because A, their movement just feels a little bit too static when they're standing in front of a tripod camera and everybody in the room is standing still, and B, you can't really like move the camera too much before you're revealing that you're just filming like a piece of paper for the most part. It was pretty daunting to approach this video with so many moving camera shots, never having done that in the past. Also was anticipating hiring a VFX team for it. And every shot, I mean, every scene feels special to me in one way or another. I think the hardest scene or sequence is when she's standing in front of the wall of water. Figuring out how to get that water to look like that was a massive challenge. I was looking for footage of like waterfalls that I could use as comp plates. You can't just reverse it. It's really hard to mask around water. You can't just feather it, otherwise it looks just really weird and like it looks too fake. So getting that look dialed in was very tricky. On top of the shot is moving in and out, and so the parallax shift there was also something that I had never had to deal with in the past. Seeing it as a final result, that is a scene where I look at it and I feel pretty excited about how it ended up looking. Obviously, if I had more time, would change a few things, so don't mention the rotos too much if you see it, but very proud of how that one came together. And a little bit of serendipity is we were talking about how to light it on set, and the gaffer had just auditioned a flashing light behind her head and talking about, well, oh, how cool would that look? And on the day, I'm feeling very nervous, and I'm like, I'm gonna have to match that light in every shot. That's gonna be a huge challenge in addition to the already huge challenge that this shot is. Then we do a take without it, and then we realize, okay, let's just do the flickering light. I'll just figure it out. Because he added that added a component to my comp, which when the light was flickering, I could show some rain getting lit up from the back, which I feel like completely glued it all together, and it gave me a little bit of foreground asset to use to help marry her into the background. And had he not mentioned that, I would have never done that, and then the shot would have at least been harder to comp, but as it was in the video now, it would not have looked as good. I think that was an example of an audible where him saying that and showing it on the day was beneficial, because the video benefited from him just saying, oh, this could look pretty cool, and ended up like making the scene for me.
With all the experience you've gained in your career, what do you do differently now than you did at the beginning?
Previously, I kind of felt the responsibility to wear every hat in terms of production, and I would be very hesitant to hand a responsibility over to somebody, even if they're very experienced in filmmaking. I think my style is very DIY. I didn't go to film school. I learned on YouTube Academy, and I've never really had a chance to get onto set with other people to see how things went. And that happened for a number of years where I just never really had any real filmmaking experience. It was just things that I saw on the internet and then me kind of recreating it. How I kind of pictured myself doing it was just doing it all myself, so that way I can kind of guarantee the outcome for myself and for the clients. And lately, the thing that I don't do now is try to do everything all by myself. There's a lot of value in having teams and people who are good at what they do, better than you at what they do, and if they can just focus on that one task, usually you get a better result. But in the past, I was fearful of kind of handing over those responsibilities, whether it's cinematography or directing or anything like that, just because when I was getting started, I felt like my approach to it is what had people reaching out to me. And so handing that off and having something go wrong and having nowhere to point except for myself was very scary. So now I'm very interested in hiring out teams and people who are good at what they do. I think there's a lot of value in what that brings to the final product. But previous to the last 2 or 3 years, I didn't even want a big crew. I just wanted to keep things small and nimble, so that way I could kind of guarantee the outcome, guarantee things going at least right for the most part.
Can you give us your top tips for treatment writing or negotiating for a project?
Getting projects when you're getting started out, I would suggest just hitting people up on Instagram, doing things very grassroots style. Put work out while you're doing it. I don't think selling people on something that you're not really demonstrating that you're doing works for a lot of people. Try to network with a smaller scale, like they say the riches is in the niches. And so apply that to a certain degree. It doesn't have to be the biggest, you don't have to reach out to the biggest label to try to hope to get a job for a smaller artist. For me specifically, music videos, if I was giving advice to a music video director getting started, keep in mind that a lot of bands tour together, and so you might be working with the small bands right away, but other bands who are picking the support bands typically watch the videos, they listen to the music. And so if you can make a stellar video for a smaller artist, it's not uncommon for a bigger band to notice that and then want the same thing, especially if they can offer more and get something a little bit bigger than what they've seen. I think the path to getting yourself into a system or an industry or anything is continue to create, do it for free, do it for just, do it out of curiosity. Try to execute ideas that you think are hard. More often than not, you realize it's actually not as complicated as it seems if you just put a little bit of effort into it. And so if I was getting started, that's where I would point people. When I'm making treatments, typically I'll try to have a preliminary call with the band or management or label, see if there's any kind of like creative direction that they're interested in to start with. Maybe it's a color palette, or they want it to feel influenced from album artwork, or there's some theme of night. Getting familiar with what the band is kind of looking for, if not specifically, then just kind of globally, what do they want it to feel like, is where I start. After that, I'll gather some references, do a lot of hunting on YouTube for movie scenes. Looking at shot deck is really inspiring, even just seeing like single frames of images. Sometimes lighting styles can paint a picture of a mood, and then you can find an image that kind of matches the mood of a song that you're listening to, that you're writing for, and that one mood can open the door to a story concept or a location concept. After that, I would create a full treatment, and I'd announce to whoever the client is, I would announce to the client that the treatment is in a very iterative stage. It's normally V1, V2, V3. Here's how I interpret the track and the visuals that I imagine would go with it. But also, if there's things that you read in this that feel like they unlock something for you, I'm open to reworking my version of it to satisfy the artist. I think a lot of directors, I think some directors feel like this immense pressure to be the one that comes up with everything, and they forget that the client might be a musician, where it's like they're an artist as well, and as they're writing the track, they might have a specific thing that they're thinking about that helps them get to that place to sing it in that particular way. And so if I really value the artist's input on ideas, because I don't think that me listening to it as like an outside person for the first time is the only way that it gets interpreted. And so hearing their influence is important. So I would do that, and then we would iterate back and forth on the treatment, and then go through and try to do like a mock budget of it, make sure you can actually afford the ideas. I am notorious for overwriting my treatments and trying to figure out ways to pull off things that seem extreme. And so that's been a lot of, that's been an interesting thing to try to navigate around. So yeah, don't overwrite, but also get your ideas out there and try to have a little back and forth with the team to make sure that creative aligns on both ends.
How do you balance budget limitations when negotiating a project?
I am the worst at overwriting for the budgets that we get proposed, but I think there's two things that, I think there's two positive sides to that. There's one where maybe you get pitched an idea and it's business, right? There's like a business side of filmmaking. They might approach you with a particular budget, and you could come back and say, with an extra 10, with an extra 20, XYZ can get accomplished. And some of the times, even if it doesn't go to that 10 or 20, it might go to an extra 5, and that extra 5 can just go to in front of the screen, and that can make a huge difference. Explaining what things can happen with the budget, saying doing it this style, we can accomplish it this way. Really just iterating back and forth and being very transparent about the cost of production with the client, transparent about what you feel capable of doing with that amount of money or that amount of days to produce it. Same with the back end post-production, explaining how post-production goes before shooting it. I think there's like a common theme of feeling like once it's all shot, it can be edited pretty quickly, and there's a lot of times where things need iteration. You might even need reshoots in a particular sense. And so just communicating that stuff up front is really vital in how we even budget things, similar to how we do treatments. I'll do a version 1, 2, and 3 of a budget where we will explain, for this type of shoot, we can prioritize the bigger cameras and get, if you want to shoot on an LF or whatever, we can do that, but we're going to have to take some out of this. And if this feels important to you, then maybe we should reconsider shooting on this camera and just a different style of budget. And so on top of having different creative approaches, we'll also communicate different ways we can spend the money. And that way, if anything goes wrong or it goes really right, there's no question on the back end of being like, well, why did you spend that on this? Probably everybody's been there at one point. And so really communicating how the budget gets spent ahead of time, I think is pretty vital.
As a filmmaker, you know that every shooting day depends on precision and coherence. Every scene, every shot, every detail must align to bring your vision to life. That's where MasterShot comes in. Designed specifically for the pre-production and production stages, MasterShot empowers you to import scripts effortlessly and start building your vision from the ground up. Build a detailed shot list to ensure every angle and moment is planned to perfection. Keep references in one place for quick and easy access throughout the process. Plan dynamic, flexible schedules that adapt to the realities of set. Share projects with your crew to keep everyone aligned every step of the way. With MasterShot, you can avoid on-set mistakes by using digital schedules that captures every critical detail, minimizing risk and maximizing efficiency. MasterShot is your assistant, ensuring that every moment on set is dedicated to your craft. Start using MasterShot today. Try it free via the link in the video description. And now let's get back to our guest and the next question. For each project, how do you decide which tools or equipment will be needed?
Specific tools for a project, it's kind of a case-by-case thing. Usually the treatment will dictate if I need a particular piece of gear. That might just come from wanting to pull off like a gag for a shot. Other than that, I usually do like to use the same type of gear for every shoot, just so that way myself and the crew are familiar with what we have at our disposal. So I like to use the same cameras as much as I can, the same types of light, so that way we're just familiar with levels of output, temperatures, things like that. Ease of maneuvering the lights, because some are just enormously heavy and require giant combo stands and generators and all that. And a lot of times, especially for indoor shoots, you just don't need gear like that anymore. And so we like to have a small package that just kind of feels like our everyday carry for the most part. And then if there's something in the treatment that calls for a specific lighting gag or a cinematography trick, that's usually when we'll implement getting things like that into it. But there are times where pieces of gear dictate the video entirely, or just a concept for a scene. There was a time where I wanted to use a robot arm, and so I just kind of wrote a scene around the robot arms. That way we could just get familiar with using that and understanding what that process looks like in a real world sense.
What tips would you give to ensure a smooth production?
Accept that everything is fluid and nothing is going to go exactly how you picture it, and leave room in the day to pivot or iterate if you need to. And also just being somebody don't be too exclusive, no matter what your role is, whether you're director or a PA or a producer or anything. Be willing to communicate with anybody in the room who needs something. Be somebody who can kind of lift the mood up. It's very easy there's such a massive amount of work on a film production for things to happen, even just setting up all of the lights and getting the sound rolling and getting the everything printed so everybody knows what's going on. It's like those are just huge tasks before the shots even roll. Being somebody in the room who can kind of just keep the mood light. Remind everybody that we're just here to kind of make something. We're all doing what we've set out to do. We're here on this day together to create this thing together. Let's have a good time while we're doing it and not put too much pressure on it. We're all experienced in doing this thing, so we don't need to be creating tension if it's not necessary. Obviously, there's going to be times and moments where things are hyper stressful. If you're losing the sun and you need a sunset shot, everybody can be quiet and let's focus on getting this shot. But for the most part, it's not impossible to have a good mood while you're on a shoot, and I think it just trickles out. If you're in a bad mood and rub somebody the wrong way, that could happen to the next person, and before you know it, the whole crew is just kind of in this weird tense spot. Whereas if you're putting out good energy and making sure everybody's got what they need, and do you have any questions, anything you feel like offering for input, a lot of times there's, we've all been on a set where people are standing around going, they should do it like this. And so I've experienced that enough times to where maybe I'll ask somebody who wouldn't necessarily speak up about this particular thing, like, what would you do in this scenario? And they actually might have some good answers that they've seen either happen in the past or just like good, quick ideas. So we're all kind of equals, at least on my sets, we're all kind of equals in terms of creatives. Obviously, I will take the reins and direct it and make sure it goes where it needs to go. But in terms of influences and shoot from the hip types of ideas, always open to that. And a lot of the times that makes it into the video and can kind of elevate it, because there's just like a serendipity in the creation process where the lighting looks perfect for this one line. It's like, oh, let's actually shoot it like this. And so just keeping the door open for that and just being a good person. Like, that's just so important to making the set run smooth, is just don't be a dickhead.
Can you tell us about a time something did not go as planned? How did you handle it?
I actually don't have like a pivotal moment or anything like monumental that happened where it like went catastrophically wrong. One example, I had a video concept and it was a oneer. Camera's rolling the whole time. We need to move through the set and execute a sequence of events within that one time frame. I had thought that we set it up pretty simply. We just had one room similar to this room that we're in right now and 5 band members, and I just need to see them hitting certain things at a certain point in the song. If we nail that, great, we've nailed it. Going back to a previous question, I had hired somebody that I hadn't worked with before. It was a new DP, and it was a 12-hour day, and it took 10 hours to light this shot, and that left us 1 hour to shoot before we had remaining hour to break down and get out, which, you know, we're all filmmakers. We know that 1 hour to break down and get out of a location is next to impossible. So realistically, it's like you have 35 minutes to shoot this oneer, and we had booked a 12-hour day anticipating that there'd be maybe 2 to 3 hours of light setup, maybe 4 if we really want to go crazy with it, and then we'll have 6 hours to really run through this and dial it in and get it going good. I'm mimicking a gimbal Ronin right now, but we would have enough time to like really like massage how the shot is going to play out. And it ended up not working that way at all. And funny enough, that video ended up getting played in like Target for like their advertising. I got a plaque for that video. It's my least favorite video of all time, and there's something in the universe that is like, that was like the one time where things went wrong. And I think that was my takeaway, was to not be so willy-nilly with trusting how the process goes, and really you have to have a firm grip on at least the schedule, at least how things are supposed to look, even in a worst case scenario. And so that's something that I learned from that, was explain how if we can't do it this way, it can look like this, and this can be our backup. And then on the day, we can just immediately switch to, okay, plan B. And that way you can still get your shots and have all the time that you need. Yeah, that was a nerve-wracking experience for sure. Still got the video done, but probably my least favorite video I've ever made, and it was the first video where I actually got like some notoriety from it. So there's something poetic about that.
Could you also tell us about the best moments you have ever experienced on set?
In terms of like positive, magical moments on set, I hope this doesn't sound like a corny answer, but it's literally every shoot has at least one of those moments where you don't know how the shot's gonna work out. You don't know if you have enough time to pull something off. Maybe there's like an experimental thing you're trying to accomplish, and so you budget an hour and a half to execute that idea, and then you roll the camera, and then the first take is like, oh, that's actually exactly what I needed. Let's run another one for safety, but we can move on. That happens pretty frequently. I would say if you have a good enough team around you, that should be kind of a common thing, where you are surprised at either the speed of things or how something looks or how something gets accomplished, whether it's just super efficient and you're just like, oh, that actually just saved us 4 hours by that one idea that just came out. I think every shoot has like a little bit of that, and that just is filmmaking as a whole. There's always little tricks and gags and things you can't guarantee are gonna look good or work out, but just through the effort of everybody's experience kind of collaborating to bring this to life usually works out. And that's usually the moment where it's like, if there's 5 or 10 people working on setting something up for a shot, and then you roll the camera and see it, even if it's exactly what you wanted, that it feels like a magical moment where you go, oh dude, there it is, we're good, the video's gonna work. So I get that feeling on almost every shoot where I see a shot. I'll see a one-liner from singer and the camera's moving just right, and I'm like, cool, that's actually the sickest moment. I couldn't have even pictured that moment happening. I think it just happens on every shoot.
How involved are you in post-production?
I am the whole department for post-production, handling edit, even I'll do previs stuff, and I think that kind of bleeds into post-production as well, because I sometimes will use a previs for a post-edit where I'm just kind of stacking things on top of scenarios that I've kind of tried to build out. Post-production is vital to a film or a music video working. I think I mentioned it before, but just the edit is so incredibly crucial to how something lands to a viewer. It can make a song sound faster. It can make a song sound slower if the shots are longer or faster. Getting familiar with how editing can influence the emotion of what you're watching feels important. And then a baseline level knowledge of visual effects, I think, goes such a long way. You don't have to be spectacular at doing anything yourself with visual effects, but understanding how the VFX artist needs to receive green screen footage. What are your lighting levels on the green screen versus the skin? How much separation do you actually need? How much can you get away with? Those types of things make you a better filmmaker, because if you need to grab something on the fly, you might know you could just pop up a green screen and chuck them back into the room that you missed a shot in, if you know how the process works. Same with like adding things into shots. There's a lot of times where somebody will, for example, somebody might shoot something with fire, and you can only get your practical fire to be so big because of safety reasons or whatever. So understanding like what a VFX artist would need to enhance that. Are they going to need to rotoscope something and cut something out? What does that mean when somebody's doing that, and what is like a worst case scenario for a VFX artist versus a best case scenario? Knowing that stuff, I feel like, goes such a long way, especially if you're planning on fixing things in post, or if you are one of those types of directors by choice or by accident. Just getting familiar with how things can get cleaned up in post will help you communicate towards the artist what exactly you're looking for. And it can also save you money on the front end of things, where maybe you don't need the practical fire at all, and you didn't need the fire marshal, and all you needed was your DP just to chuck an orange light in that corner. Understanding how that happens in post goes a long way. It can even save you money while you're shooting.
Let us take you behind the frame. Check out today's featured project from our special guest, complete with a detailed shot list and storyboards, in the project example section on MasterShot. Dive behind the scenes to see how it all came together, and you'll also get a sneak peek at the exciting projects coming up in future episodes. If you have creative differences with a client or an artist, what do you do to make sure everybody's happy in the end?
Creative differences are it's interesting, because in my eyes, there's never like one right or wrong answer or way to go about something. It's all about, like, unless you're you're recreating something, or, you know, trying to execute like a Wes Anderson style. It's like there are do's and don'ts. But then with creative input, I keep talking about music videos, so that's what's familiar to me. Oh, but maybe it's the actors too. It's all a form of art. Even operating a camera is a form of art, where getting really smooth, like a Steadicam operator, is like, it's artful when a Steadicam operator is really good at what they do. There's an art to it. I think everybody kind of has, like, everybody should have like a open door to say their opinion. And if there is differences, figure out the pros and cons of the differences. What do you gain or lose by changing something up? Maybe it's a financial decision, and maybe you make a decision in the phase of production, and the artist might hear that and say, well, why are we doing it that way? And then you could explain what's XYZ financial. We could do it this way, but this is going to have to get scrapped, or this is going to have to get changed around. And sometimes explaining that might make them go, oh, okay, I get it. I see how it is. And then other times they go, no, we absolutely need to have this. It's like, okay, what do you want to sacrifice? I don't ever try to marry myself to anything, really. Like if there's, you know, a scene that I love, that I am excited to shoot, and then it's the day of, and the artist goes, I don't really feel comfortable doing that, or they just feel like it doesn't serve the video, no problem. I can implement that later on down the line, because at the end of the day, it's their video as much as it is. I don't even feel like it's my video. I feel like I'm just kind of a catalyst to the creation of it. And so I get hired for just the knowledge I have for like this realm of things, and then understanding how this can make the artist look a particular way. And so I feel like my role as a director when I'm talking to an artist is letting them know like how we can do this, so that way they come out to the world feeling or looking like this. I kind of picture myself as like a filter, more so than like a shot caller, or somebody who's like it needs to happen this way, otherwise it fails. Certain things are particular, like for visual effects, tracking markers, all that, like you just might need to shoot something a particular way, and it's like, you're not gonna get it. This is just how it has to get done. More often than not, if there's like a scene, like discrepancy on what we're shooting or anything, I'm pretty open to letting the artist let me know if they feel good or bad about it. And if not, we can pivot, it's no issue.
What was the biggest challenge you faced while working in the film industry, and how did you overcome it?
Biggest challenge probably was this previous summer, where I had two of the biggest jobs that I'd ever been approached for come in at the same time. Not directly at the same time. One kind of was getting spoken about a few months prior, conversation fell off. Another big one came along. We immediately started producing it and getting things going for it. And then this other one caught back up to it and said, hey, we're ready to go. So we're doing these two projects in tandem. They both demanded a lot in terms of post-production for visual effects, and especially a lot for pre-production as well. There was just more involved in these bigger budget videos than I had done in the past. Normally work with a small team, and so it's easy for us to chat about one video at a time. When you start going into two videos at a time, especially at that scale, it was really, really challenging to keep up with that. And there was a phase where I tried to hire some VFX artists to help out with that. It went south, and so you're kind of left holding the bag, and you're the one that gets hired to execute it. And so that was just a really challenging moment, was taking on a little bit too much work, assuming that short-term relationships that I've had would be able to help execute, and making the wrong judgment call, and ultimately having to drive both of those projects home within such a short time frame. It was mentally exhausting, physically exhausting, which sounds goofy to say because I'm just sitting at a computer, but editing for 35 hours at a time, sleeping for 5, and then wake back up and do another 35-hour session. Did that for 8 days in a row, and I had a paradigm shift where I thought about my life more globally than I ever had. Yeah, that was probably the most challenging time.
How do you navigate the business side of filmmaking, such as marketing yourself?
In terms of marketing, I don't think I would be the best person to ask about that. I post to Instagram like 2 or 3 times a year at most. I really try to be like as offline as possible, just because I don't want to get caught up in the race of consistently putting out the best thing that I've ever made. I don't think people or art happens like that. I don't think people work like that. And I was putting a lot of pressure on myself to whatever I'm releasing to the world has to be better than the last thing. And it's really easy to do that when you're like posting stuff for yourself. It's much easier to kind of like let that go if you're doing it for clients. And so marketing, I think, really is the best trick for it. And I still get flooded with work just through word of mouth, just being available for people that I'm interested in working with, expressing schedules and things like that. I think if you can position yourself to be creating things that people latch onto, like I personally create music videos for bands that a lot of fans like to know more about the band rather than just like listening to it on the radio or something. The bands that I work with have this like really dedicated fan base. And so I think just working with artists like that helps spread the word in some way, because the fans also kind of latch on to who's a part of the process of making things for them. And then you kind of just get injected into the culture of it. And after doing it for so long, you just kind of become like a common name. And this is all speculation, by the way. I have no idea actually how the perception is. But yeah, I think you just get affiliated with things that are succeeding, and then people are attracted to what are the components of this thing that are succeeding, that are, if not helping it, just moving it along. And so I think just by pure luck, I was affiliated with a lot of bands who became bigger. But even before that, just word of mouth, just being available. Like I said, making sure you have a good experience on set, make sure the label's happy, deliver things early if you can. Anybody watching this will laugh at me saying that, but deliver things early and just be like, over deliver a little bit, I think, is the best marketing. I don't think that people get their biggest jobs from posting to Instagram, hey, looking for work, kit available. I don't think people get jobs like that. I think a lot of times it comes from being good in a room, and then people talk about that. On the flip side, it's like if you're bad to be around in a room, you can pretty much guarantee you're never, you're not, it's going to be really tough to scale. And so I think that's the best marketing, is just literally being a good person and put out work that feels just 1 degree beyond what you feel like the average would be, and people notice.
What do you do to maintain a sustainable flow of projects?
Maintaining like a steady flow of projects has always been something that I was trying to figure out, and I'm even still trying to get a grip on how I can create some sort of like long-term flow of work for myself, because I think it's a common feeling that a lot of filmmakers have, where when you're working and you're busy, it's easy to imagine your life looking like that for as long as you want it to be. But then 2 months after a job, you haven't gotten a phone call. It's really easy to wonder if you're ever going to get another phone call at all. And so the line of work that I'm in is in music industry. So I've gotten familiar with release cycles and how just kind of the music industry operates. It shuts down close to the winter time. Springtime, it kind of ramps back up. And summer, it feels like that's when really everybody's releasing things. Everybody wants to have that like hot summer song. So there's a lot of work in the summer, a little bit less around like the holiday season, but bands go through cycles of releasing albums. Some bands do it once a year, some bands do it every 2 years, and some are just kind of writing music as they go, and whenever the record is done is when it will come out. If you can have 5 to 10 different bands that feel like you are their go-to guy for them, and you can structure their release cycles kind of around your schedule, you could understand that this band releases between March and July, this one goes from July to September, and then if you're just on a repetitive kind of cycle with them, then by the next time the next year comes around, this whole cycle is done and then it kind of ramps back up again. So I've been working with bands who have released 3 or 4 records. At this point, I've been doing this for 10 years and at least have been in the conversation as they're putting out new stuff. And it's been a way for us to identify, okay, around this time, this band's probably going to be putting something out. Maybe we'll reach out and just say, hey, just letting you know, schedule's filling up. Can we block a little time out for you guys? Or they'll reach out far enough in advance where you can kind of feel it out. That's what I would do. And if you can't do that, then just, it's never a bad thing to try to plan things for the future. Like right now, I'm planning a gig for a new artist. It's December right now, and we're talking about shooting in April. Trying to schedule jobs far in advance that way, so that way you can schedule unilaterally. You can at least accept stuff that happens before that, and then even after that, it gives you a stake in the ground to point at for other projects and say, I can do it around this time, I'm just not available this time, and that can usually land a job.
What tools or resources have been instrumental in your growth as a filmmaker?
The Sony a7S III is probably like the thing that I look at, and I'm just I feel like if that thing weren't around, obviously it would have been a different camera, but it's just such a workhorse little camera. It's funny because being in like the film world, a lot of people feel like so curious how we are so comfortable using such a small camera on something where like for the same budget and a different crew, they might have something that looks like this, where we have multicam, big, Reds and Alexas or whatever. I think that camera like really opened the door for my directing style to come out, because things are so iterative on set that I like to be able to be nimble and move around quickly. And if an idea comes up, positioning the camera in a way where it doesn't take an hour and a half to get that setup done, because then the lust for that idea might have died, and it's just like, I don't even care anymore. Let's just go back to what we were doing and finish it. The piece of gear is definitely a small camera, because you can get away with shooting so much, and you might disappoint your DP or your AC doing that, but also the viewer, the person who's consuming the media that you're making, they don't care, nor do they even want to, what it was shot on. Was shot on a little mirrorless camera or a big giant camera, it's gonna get compressed on YouTube, and they're gonna play it on their like smart TV that has that weird refresh rate thing, you know what I mean? So it's like the content that you're shooting really is the most important thing, and the a7S III is like just good enough to where it's invisible if you put the right lens on it, to feeling like it's like a big budget camera, especially to people who aren't looking for like the details of what that image looks like.
What are some of the most important qualities you as a director need to have?
I feel like an important quality for a director is the ability to pivot and just fluidity, and being open to input and criticism. It's really easy. You know, you wear the title as a director, and I've seen people kind of feel a particular way because they hold that title. It's like a way of like grandstanding in a way. And I just, even doing this for 10 years, I feel like I'm in my infant stages of directing. Every project feels new and hard, and I don't know how I'm gonna shoot this sequence. And so I think advice for directors is just be open to things changing, be open to people maybe not getting your idea, and either rework it in a way where it feels more understandable to them, or like having that like sense of security of like, I know that it doesn't make sense right now, but in the edit it will all come together. Like, be open and fluid to things changing, and be willing to pivot, but also like knowing what you need to get done to have the project succeed is important. And so just it's a tightrope walk of making sure you're getting what you need, but also being open to creative input.
What are your thoughts on the future of filmmaking with the rise of AI?
I can't imagine that we're gonna, and it will be funny to be wrong, but I can't imagine that AI is going to fully take over the movie industry, just because it's such a dollars business. So many people make money who aren't in front of the screen or even behind it, like financiers and things like that. It just is, it's an industry, it's a beast. And so I just can't imagine that it goes all towards AI. I do think there is room for AI in filmmaking, way less of like a generative AI perspective. I think generative AI ethically and just like, it just is weird in general. It's the training model data is strange. It's more often than not sourced ethically. I think as a whole, filmmaking, like the joy of it is the process of the creation. And then by the time you get to the final result, like for me, the final video is the least exciting part of the creating the video. It's the going back and forth with people who you respect and what they do in their craft, and feeling things out in like a right or a wrong way. Like that, it's like a creative journey. I hate saying creative journey, but like it's that process that is what is fulfilling. So that way when the final result is done, it like makes all that stuff worth it. And so if you're in like the generative AI space and you're putting out stuff where it's a prompt and it goes out, and then, you know, whatever happens with it, I don't see how that's fulfilling. And so that like kind of bums me out from like a human artist perspective. It just is like, it's soulless, and your only goal is the end result. And I don't think that's why any of us start doing this. Is the end result is fun, but also the process of the creation is arguably like what this whole thing is about, you know? And so, yeah, I think generative AI kind of robs people of that. And I don't like generative AI at all, but I think AI definitely has a space in filmmaking. It's helpful for, say you're stuck on a script or you need help batting around an idea. ChatGPT would be perfect for that. It doesn't need to make your full script and you copy and paste it and say, this is what we're shooting, but you could say, give me a log line of a story premise for a sci-fi film, and that could be something that could unlock something for you. I think that's helpful. In visual effects, there's Copycat and Nuke. And I think that's super helpful, where it doesn't remove the artist from the process at all, but it does help the artist work faster. I think that's important, because I think there's like such a slow process for a lot of aspects of filmmaking, especially with the post side of things. So if there's things that can aid in helping speed along an already existing workflow, that's all good. But generative AI being sold as a commodity, I think that is probably the most depressing thing I could imagine. It's just the most soulless piece of content, and it doesn't even look that good right now. It will look better for sure, but it removes all the fun out of it. You know, it's like when we were getting started, I did not want a camera because I just wanted to be known for like making the best videos possible, and I could make it look as good as just filming my buddy being silly was fun. And like that, like the laughter, like it's like that's what I think about, you know. I don't think about the video, and so it robs you of that, and it's going to get worse. And so I think that's why I talk about it so negatively right now, is that there will be a point where there's fully generated shows and whatever, and they're just created by big businesses and people who don't need the extra $100 million from that show succeeding or whatever. I think it robs the chance for other artists to actually become artists.
What's the most important lesson you've learned throughout your career?
Probably just having a good team, I think, is like vital. You can, if you want to go fast, you go alone. If you want to go far, you go together. It's like, it's so true. So many times where I've like hit particular walls, whether I'm fed up with editing all the time and I just want to, I don't even care about doing this. I just want to do something else. And having a team who can kind of like bring you back down to earth, remind you like why we're all doing this together. That's super important. Developing a good team is probably what it is. I think all the things that have gone wrong have been because the team that I thought that I had at the time wasn't the best for the way that I like to work. And the things that have gone better than I could imagine was because the team that I had was there ready to execute at the highest level that they could. And that is what created the success of that project. Them sticking with you throughout the process of doing multiple years of different shoots and your own personal evolution as a director, even just people witnessing the same people on set every time, it paints a clear picture for the people that are hiring you, that you're somebody that people can stick around with for a long time and not push people away. I feel like a lot of my answers come back to just being a good person, but I feel like it is common in film for people to just kind of be a little pretentious and like, you know, short with others and feel like they've gone farther than others and you don't know how much I've done, whatever. So like a huge lesson is just remain being humble, and you know, everybody's learning at different speeds and having different interests and things like that. And so if you can just have a good team and be good in the world, things end up working out for you, I feel like.
What's the main advice you would give to filmmakers starting out today?
Be willing to learn as much as you possibly can about all different aspects of filmmaking. If you're a camera guy and you're really interested in the YouTube camera space right now and you're entering into, you know, shooting on reds and things, just be curious about all the different aspects of camera operation, lenses, what choices to make. Be willing to work for free, for sure. I feel like it kind of comes with the people that stay in this industry, is just being kind of forever curious about how things are getting made or executed, is what eventually gets people to that next level. After so many questions, you do find yourself kind of looking back being like, oh, I actually understand a lot of this stuff and I've traveled pretty far. If I was getting started, I would say just work for free and just be curious and try to learn as much as you can about every like aspect of filmmaking. If you're a DP and you want to be a really good DP, it probably benefits you to learn a lot about color grading, to understand what can the color grade enhance, what are my limitations with color grading, because that can help you be a better DP on set. If you know certain things can get pushed or pulled in a particular direction, that means you could work faster, which is ultimately like what we're all looking for in film production, is just speed and turnaround times. And so if you're able to have the confidence of what things can happen, what things can be done later in post, that'll make you a more efficient DP. And that goes with directing. Like my personal interest, directing is just like an umbrella because I'm interested in all aspects of filmmaking, and it always kind of varies between maybe a few months here I'm interested in cinematography, a few months here it's visual effects. But I think knowing even just a little bit about all of that stuff kind of helps me become a better director, just because I know how to communicate at least the terminology to the people I would hire. Be willing to try and experiment stuff. I feel like on set, you should always be implementing at least one new little technique or trying out a new shot. Those experiences, after so many times, you can look back and say, oh, I've actually done X, Y, Z and know how this goes. I know that this is going to go well, and all of it just makes you more efficient for the projects that come later down the road. Yeah, just be willing to do stuff for free or for cheap when you're first starting out. Even as you're getting more established, remain curious and try to stay humble like you were in the beginning, and you go so far.
Where is the industry headed in the next 5 years?
I think it will be like, it will go extreme in both directions. One towards like the AI technical side of things. I don't feel like we've had like a huge technical breakthrough since like 8K stuff came out. Like I think there will be some new piece of machinery that comes, or some new piece of gear that comes out that really captures the whole industry and could kind of shift things that way. It could be AI implementation in one regard or another. So I think the tech is going to advance in a really exponential way and provide like new tools and things that people can use just for all different types of things that we're not really fully aware of yet, like help with editing, shot listing, all that stuff. Like AI is definitely going to be a integral role in software. But also I think as many people that are interested in that are interested in pushing away from that and going back more to like the old school style of filmmaking. So I feel like I've seen a lot of practical stuff being implemented lately, which is really cool to see because that's how movies were made in, you know, when we were first starting to make them. And so back then they didn't need all this fancy tech and, you know, robotic slider and all that stuff. It would just be Jimmy on the slider, just pushing it back and forth. So you didn't need all of this stuff to make something that was incredible. And I think people realize that, especially people with no money realize that. And there's like a spectacle to getting it all in camera. And so I feel it going super hard in both directions, where people are really going to be leaning into the practical side of like old school filmmaking, just like retroactively recreating things. Even though they're harder to do, there's more authenticity to that style of filmmaking. The technical side, like we're going to see like an AI movie is definitely going to come out in the next 5 years, fully written by AI, fully produced, you know, it's like the whole thing. And so I think we'll see it that way too. And I hope that fails. But yeah, I think it'll go both ways. And I think we will land somewhere in the middle of the new tech aiding in making things feel more authentic. I think we haven't found that bridge yet.
Name your top 3 music videos.
Number 1, Jamie XX, Gosh. That is hands down one of the best music videos to ever be made. Not just because of like the visuals that go into it, but just knowing the story of how it all happened. I don't know if I can explain it the right way. There's area in China where they rebuilt a smaller version of Paris, and that whole area is abandoned now. And so they go there and they got a school of 200 young boys to all look and dress the same way, and they're shooting around the city. All the kids are in different buildings, like they're in different levels of the buildings, and the director is yelling through a PA like in a helicopter, telling them all to spin around while the drone shot's pushing in. Everything in that video is practical. It's visually one of the most impressive videos I've ever seen, just from like a technical perspective. I'm obsessed with it for that. It also was a song that had been out for I think like 6 years and already had a video component, and somehow the director managed to, I might be misremembering this, but I think he got like a good amount of money to remake this video for it. It's beautiful and it's emotional, and nothing ever happens. People are just sitting there and you get it. You get the story. That's probably like my pinnacle music video. So that was a long one. Second one, probably Watch the World Burn. No, literally Watch the World Burn would be on that list for sure. I know that other things have been made since then, but just the feeling of when that video came out, there was like a feeling in the culture where it was like, oh damn, this is like a serious video. It opened the door for, I think, a lot of people to experiment with different styles. The execution of the VFX is something that like just nobody's ever done in like the rock space, and this one felt like the first one that was like at that level. And so that one was really, really inspiring to me, just in terms of like execution, and then knowing like the landscape of rock music accomplishing something to that scale in that world is incredibly impressive. This one's kind of I'm only saying this one because I can't think of the others that I have in my list. The video Daughter Medicine. I don't know if it's on YouTube, it's on Vimeo. I'm blanking on the director's name right now. It's the story of an old couple, and the woman is blind. She's basically lost all of her vision. She goes out and tries to drive a truck one last time, and everybody's in the town is kind of freaking out about it, and it just makes you cry. It's like one of the most emotional videos I've seen. It's such slow moving shots, and the actions are slow and they're a little shaky, and it just is like, it rubs my heart in a way that I can't describe.
Give us your top 3 favorite movies.
Batman, The Dark Knight Rises, best movie that's ever been made. I think the new Dune movies are incredible. Sci-fi in general, I feel like had a weird phase. The Dune movies feel like we've entered a new era, and so that feels exciting. It's just a style I really resonate with. I'm just going to say a random one because I don't know if I have a Talk to Me actually felt really inspiring. The directors are two brothers who are YouTubers. They had never made a feature film before. And so I think as interested in the story of that movie as much as I am the movie itself, I'm not typically into horror movies that much. They captured a horror movie in a way that felt really fresh, and just the movie is a favorite of mine, but it's more like the accomplishment of the directors and just kind of demonstrating what's possible. Even if you hadn't done 100 movies previous to this one, it's like it's their first movie, and it's so good to me.
What are your top YouTube channels, podcasts, or books that you would recommend to the viewers?
For anybody in the film world, I think Visual Effects Artists React they're a great resource because you get to understand how a visual effects artist is looking at either plate footage or things as a final result. And so it can really inform you if you have to do even a quick little thing like we talked about, like maybe you just need to add a little flame on a tea light candle and you didn't have a lighter on set and you just need to add that really quick. Hearing how they would describe that shot working or breaking is really important. You might learn, okay, I should actually bust out a light and shine a light over that tea light because the candle light would emit light. I think earlier versions of myself would not really consider like the physics of things that would happen if I was going to incorporate visual effects. So VFX Artists React is a big one. Film Riot is really good. They talk about how to DIY your way through certain scenarios, and they also make short films with a little bit of a budget, so you kind of get to see a variety scale of different things being executed and see how you can pull things off for little to no money, for $500, for $20,000, and they kind of talk through their whole process and tools they use. They've been around way before the YouTube filmmaking space turned into what it is today. And so they were always like, when I was just getting started and I had a little T2i, I would watch Film Riot to learn how to like build my own camera slider and things like that. So they've always been helpful for me learning either VFX tricks or just directing knowledge. Anything like having to do with like philosophy, like life philosophy. I think there's a lot of good podcasts out there. This probably comes at no surprise, but any interview with like Rick Rubin, I think is really good because he talks about the process of an artist rather than just like how to make the best song. It's really has nothing to do with the technical side of making a good song and way more to do with how are things feeling and what decision feels right. How do you nurture yourself in an environment to put on the best version of yourself for when you're in that mode of creation. And I think that stuff's important. I think just globally understanding like yourself and how like things affect you and how you affect other things, like having an awareness of that is really important as a director, but just as anybody in film. So yeah, anything Rick Rubin I think is probably good to listen to.
What are you working on right now, and what are your biggest career goals you're working towards?
Right now, I'm working on, I have a couple of projects, typical music videos, nothing out of the realm of what we typically work on. I do have a bit of a Goldilocks project in the ether right now. I don't want to say it on camera, but I hope that it works. It's an artist that I was listening to when I was maybe 10 years old. So the opportunity to do that would be incredible. But also I'm kind of looking at taking my own advice from earlier and trying to put things out for myself. I feel like the world of YouTube as a whole is really exciting because you can self-release anything you want. You don't need to, haggle any deals or do anything like that. And succeeding is just entirely dependent on, is what you made good or is it bad? And so I think it's like, I appreciate the instant feedback loop that it would provide and the ability to distribute just on my own schedule, whatever, feels exciting. I feel like I've spent the last 5 or so years really honing in the craft of like visual effects and directing, and I'd be excited to implement that towards things that feel a bit more story driven. I don't necessarily get approached for story driven pieces hardly at all. It's mostly for music videos, and I think a way for me to prove myself capable of doing that is just to start making them on my own and release them. Yeah, the feedback from getting from it working or not working would be informative to me. I feel like that's something I'm interested in learning more about myself and my directing style.
Stay tuned. We've got more amazing guests coming your way. Top filmmakers will be sharing their stories, insights, and expert tips to help you elevate your craft. Follow us for exclusive content and behind-the-scenes moments that will inspire and take your filmmaking to the next level. Don't miss out. Subscribe to our channel today.